Howdy, I'm Yojimbo Blade. You probably clicked on this because you were looking up similar videos and wanted to see what players said. Or maybe you were looking for someone to reaffirm what you already think about the game. Or maybe the algorithm decided that this video would be the right one to show you. If you just want to hear if is game good or bad, I will say that I enjoy Arknights Endfield, after trudging through the parts that I did not enjoy. But if you want to hear my opinions and experiences, then I am willing to share them. I will try to do them chronologically. I think it makes the most sense to do it this way so you can see how I felt about each topic as it becomes more relevant. As of writing this review, I've only played up to the end of the first chapter, and now I'm on to chapter 2, and I've maxed out pretty much all the factory stuff right now. I will not give specific story spoilers outside of the very opening of the game, so don't worry about that. Endfield starts off by putting you in what amounts to a glorified cutscene. It's a roller coaster ride. It shows you a glimpse of your past and the most exciting parts of its gameplay, hoping to get players with that hook. I was intrigued, but I wasn't hooked. I know what this scene is for, and that's fine. I was just waiting to see the actual gameplay loop. Does this look cool? Yes, it's designed to look cool, it's designed to look appealing. But what is the actual gameplay? Because this is not it. After that, our main character wakes up after 10 years or something. We forget some stuff, of course we do. We meet some people, we descend into Valley 4, we stop a local disaster, you know, some basic story stuff. First off, wow, this game looks really pretty and runs really smoothly. I don't think I need to say more. It's just beautiful, even on medium settings. Some of those textures on medium can be a bit blurry, but I don't find that to be a real issue. Right after the opening, my first impression is that the world building doesn't make any sense, and it's not for the reasons you're thinking. It's not because of the technobabble. It's not the jargon or the language they throw at you without you really having a chance to understand what it means. It's the character designs, specifically NPC designs. Now, I've never played Arknights. I don't know anything about it, but I have eyes, so I can recognize that the people in this game are basically humans with animal tails and ears. Except for the Endman, for some reason, we just look like a dude with a mask. And even then, even with the animal ears, some of them still have human ears as well, except for the ones they decide don't have human ears. Whatever, I don't really care about that. What I do care about is that clothes are important. Clothes, that's so hard to say. Clothes define culture. Clothes are an important part of world building, and none of these clothes are designed for these people. Look at this. Look at these pants. Do you not see an issue? These are normal pants, and they shouldn't be. They should be designed to accommodate people with varying tail sizes. I know in the grand scheme of things, this sounds like a really dumb complaint, but it really bugs me. The visuals tell me that these people are special humans because they have animal tails and ears. Cool, but their designs tell me that they're just normal people who have tails attached to their pants. It looks off. It looks like this world was designed for regular people, and then they decided later to give them tails and ears. Why? Every time I'm in a cutscene with the regular NPC, I feel like I have to ignore their tails, because if I don't, I'll just be annoyed that nobody is wearing clothes that make sense for them. Now, again, in the grand scheme of things, does this really matter for gameplay? No, I've spent this much time addressing pants and tails of NPCs. But what bugs me about it is that the playable characters, the ones that they want to look really good, actually do have clothes designed for the fact that, hey, these people have tails. Maybe they have clothes designed around the fact that their bodies have tails. And you can see it in their designs. So I know the devs could have designed them, they just chose not to. And I find that to be really disappointing. Like, the only way I can describe it is that, man, the fashion design of NPCs, they're just lazy. Like, this game was made with regular people, and then they decided later they wanted animal people. That is what the visuals tell me. Now, do I think that's absolutely true? I have no clue. But if they knew from the beginning that every NPC in the game was going to have a tail, do you think they would have just designed generic pants? Even in Zenless, a world where essentially half the people are animals, in that world, they have clothes designed for every person. In other media franchises that have animals, even the background NPCs, their designs are made in a way to accommodate the fact that these characters have tails. How does a society where people have tails affect the fashion? How does that affect the culture? So it's just disappointing to see that Arknights Endfield just says, man, who cares? No, That's boring. Sorry, you don't get a pass for that. Other franchises have gone out of their way to address those issues, and you chose not to. Oh, but you can just ignore that. It's like, yeah, you can just ignore that. You can also just ignore all the good things I like in this game. If I can ignore something that bugs me, I can ignore something that I find interesting. Anyway, this part really took me out of the loop. This is also off script, by the way. I wrote a script, I've gone completely off script. So let's get back to it. When I got access to the store for the first time, I was dumbfounded. I could not comprehend everything I was seeing. I opened up a tab and my first thought was that someone made the Sears catalog, but for weapons. Now that I understand it, I think it's neat, but this screen is really awful to show new players. Now, I know Endfield is a gacha game, so it's important to have this part of the shop be flashy and cool to entice players, but this is just, it's too much. And yeah, I know in gacha games sometimes there are redundant resources, but like, what is the point of this? I know this is supposed to be the slot for limited time pulls for this specific banner or whatnot. In this one, because it has a 10 next to it, it's a 10 pull. And I get that, but why does it exist? Why not just have it be lumped in with the rest of the limited time pulls? It's not like your number of pulls changes. Why don't they do that? Now, I can give a good answer, but it doesn't paint the game in a favorable light. I also find it really disgusting that on this screen, they tell players here to spend wisely, when their store page looks like this. Oh, make sure you don't miss out on these weapons or these characters, because they're only around for a limited time and you wouldn't want to miss out, right? That would be awful. Screw you, I know what you're doing. Just say it. Just tell me you want players to spend a ton of money. We already know that. I'm not going to give a breakdown of the gacha system. You can look up the flowcharts for that if you want. But I will say that this system is really good for a free-to-play player like me, because I'm encouraged to never spend any money on this game. And I won't pull for anything unless I can guarantee that I get the character that I want. Now, I'm technically not free to play. I spent, including taxes, $3.25? 24 cents, something like that. Yeah, I'm not spending anything on this game unless they offer something that I believe is really worthwhile, or if my enjoyment of the game continues, then I might choose to financially support it, just to make sure the game keeps happening. Because again, this is a live service game and eventually it will die, so if you want to keep it happening, then you gotta spend some money. Now, back to things that I like. I like that the combat feels really smooth. It has enough depth right now to keep me interested. It sort of reminds me of the combat design in Xenoblade Chronicles. Just a little bit. You can only control one character at a time, but your entire party is always active. And you can control them by using their battle arts, triggering combo arts, and their ultimates. One thing I want to address, because I think some people have complained about it, is that the combat is a bit too simple. I partly agree, but I want to push back against it. I think the combat is fine. I think Endfield would be a weaker game if its combat were as complex as its action combat rivals, because that's not the type of game that it's going for, at least not right now. Combat's not so simple that you never optimize your team, but it's also not so difficult that you need to over-optimize every little aspect of it. I think it leans more to the casual button mashing side, with more emphasis on team building and your equipment and how you time some specific skills, and I think that's a good thing. Obviously, you could choose to fight against the toughest enemies if you want, but that's not a requirement for the base gameplay. If you never want to fight against those big enemies in the end game, you're still interacting with the vast majority of the game. And when some of those people say that combat is too simple, I think what they mean is that right now, the game lacks interesting diversity in its combat. And I would agree, because most of the cast plays pretty much the exact same, or at least that's how they feel. I think I've heard players say the most interesting character to play right now is Aviwena. I have no idea how to pronounce her name, I'm very sorry. Because she has a mechanic that asks players to optimize her positioning and her skill timings for big damage. Throws out spears, bring them all back, hit enemies. Big damage, go boom. And hey, that's pretty cool. You also have the option to switch characters in fights, but for the most part, at least for now, and from what I've seen, there's not really a reason to do this unless you just feel like it. And I know this system can and will be optimized by some people. They will find some groundbreaking attack option that's only possible by swapping at specific times, and that lets you do some specific combo rotation that no one else can do. But outside of those niche interactions and probably endgame combat, scenarios, there really isn't any reason to swap the active characters since you can use everyone's battle skills whenever you want. And everyone's basic attacks are kind of the same right now. Right now the combat loop is basic attack until you can use a combo or battle skill that applies a buff or a debuff. And then you repeat that until you can use your ults. I think that's fine, but it also feels a bit stale right now just because of the roster size is so small. And I think that issue will resolve itself as we get more characters, and as the devs realize that some players want a few more mechanically engaging characters to play. And as I mentioned before, another cool thing is that all your party members are active at the same time. They even travel around with you picking up items, having some small talk. I really like that. It makes the world feel alive, like you're really traveling with a party. But it does come at the cost of, I guess, playing characters. In a game like, I'll just use other gacha games because you know them, in games like Genshin or Wuthering Waves, characters need to be manually controlled for a little bit to contribute in a meaningful way. So as a player, even if you pull for a support character and you only use them for a couple seconds in fights, you still want to use nearly every character actively to get the most benefit from them. In Endfield, you could very possibly pull for a character, put them on your team, and then never play as them. Like, you never manually control them. So I understand some of the critiques that people have made. Because you don't have to play as every character, those characters can feel less personal and therefore you feel less invested in them. I don't think I can fully agree with that. As of now, I think combat has enough interactions where you can essentially control the important skills for any character whenever you want. And on top of that, you always see them popping up in the world as you explore. So even if you aren't directly controlling them, just having them around means you will see them and you will hear them. And I think that's neat. It does remind me of those other RPGs where you have a team of people helping you and you actively see them the whole time. I like that. Back to a major issue for me. For the first, I would say 8 hours. The game desperately wants to tell you its story. The problem is that the pacing of that story is not good. I don't know if I would say it's bad, because I've played bad stories, but this one it's definitely a slog to get through. In most narrative games, they usually repeat the same few keywords and names to make sure you, the player, remember them, and then they slowly introduce new ones later just to make sure you don't get overloaded with details. And I might be wrong about this because I can't remember exactly every detail in the story, but it really didn't feel that way. It felt like the game was uncertain if the player remembered who we were, so they kept reintroducing us, just in case you forgot you were the Endman, the administrator of Endfield Industries. My name is Perlica. Oh, you're Perlica. And you must be the Endman. It's like, yes, 5th character I've met within the past 10 minutes. That is who I am. And Perlica will go, yes, this is our administrator of Endfield Industries. It's like, okay, yes, I get it. You've said this enough times. You don't need to keep repeating this. I normally don't promote skipping dialogue, especially if you enjoy the game. But the writing in the opening sections, I would say they lack brevity. But I do think this issue is fixed later on as the game stops introducing a bunch of tutorials at the same time. Now, I'm not arguing that characters should talk less. I just want dialogue to be concise and smooth-lined depending on the situation. And part of that process means removing some dialogue during certain moments. Obviously, dialogue should exist, but the game would be a lot smoother if the required dialogue in the opening was condensed. Then, if players want it, you give them the option to ask for more details. I might be misremembering this specific example, so I apologize if it's incorrect. But I think it happened a couple times, so I forget exactly when and where. In the quarry section, I want to say that the game had a cutscene dialogue with the NPC named Norman or Noman, and before it finished, he said something like, "Before we can do this thing, I need this specific device. Could you grab it off the table for me?" Okay, so it goes back to gameplay. You just walk over, pick it up, walk back to him, and he says, "Thanks for that device. Now we can do that thing." Dude, you just said that. You don't have to say that again. Now, I know they have to write it like that because you could leave the story. You could come back later and do this. But even then, he's right there. Just have him pick it up. It's not like the writing or the gameplay showed us something interesting along the way. It's not like we learned some cool detail about the world or the characters. Just have him go pick it up. Whatever. There's another example in the quarry where a big explosion happens, and naturally we go to see if people need help. But first we have to talk to Norman, and he tells us that, hey, some people are trapped and they need help, and so we need to destroy the thing that's right in front of us. Like yeah, dude, I walked 10 meters and I can see it. Like, you don't need to stop me and tell me that there's something ahead of us that we need to destroy. I can see that. What is the point of this scene? I know they can have the NPCs talk to you as you walk by them, because we've had scenes where characters talk to us as we walk. A much smoother scene would be as the player approaches Norman. Without transitioning to a dialogue scene, we just have Norman yell out, "Hello, can anyone hear me? Hello, anyone, respond." Darn it. Hurry, Enfielders, that explosion was a rift. It spawned near a lot of workers down there and I can't contact them. Please save them. And then we could have Chen say, "Right away, I'll show them not to mess with us," or something like that. Instead, they double or triple the lines for some reason, and this is just exhausting. There is a possibility that this is like a translation issue, where it makes sense in the original language or culture, but it doesn't quite make sense when it gets localized. But I've seen enough of this type of writing recently that it's just distracting. Reminder, as I said before, this issue I think does resolve itself a bit later. From what I've played in chapter 2, I have liked the pacing of it a lot more, except for the parts where like, oh my gosh, you put water into bottles and then you put them into a device? Wow, you sure are special. It's like, no, that's just like basic stuff. You put liquids into a container and you put them into this device that says put liquids in here. Whoa, you're so intelligent. It's like, yeah, she might be dumb. She might be really dumb. This isn't bad story writing because this character is canonically stupid. It's like, okay, that solves everything. That's usually not a good thing to claim, but I think in this sense, it technically works. Anyway, back to the sort of earlier parts in the story, they break up the combat and exploration with what I would like to call tedious work. Let's address it. The factory, the base building, the mines must flow. See kids, colonization is a good thing when I do it, and it's bad when other people do it. Everyone wants to talk about how bad colonization is until they're the ones who get to reap the benefits from it. The landbreakers just want to take back what's theirs, dude. I think the factory is incredibly fun, and I think some others have said a similar thing. It really tickles the right part of my brain. It really drags me in and keeps me engaged. However, that's not how the factory is introduced, because I think they do a really bad job of making it look cool. They went out of their way to have a big opening cinematic showing you all how cool zip lines and combat are, but they choose to leave this part out. Now, that's arguably a good thing because some people don't want to play Factorio. That can be too scary or too complicated or too time consuming for some people. That's fair. But I would say they should have shown off like a decently modeled and working factory and then asked players to build one themselves. Just so that you have an idea of what to do, instead of just throwing all of that in a giant tutorial. Then later you realize, oh, this is actually mandatory or something in order to unlock these later things. So now you have to spend the next hour plus just trying to understand what the heck the game is trying to ask you to do for this mode, because they do a really poor job of showcasing it to you in the story. If they spent less time talking to you and more time actually showing you examples of how to play this mode and what to do, it wouldn't nearly be so tedious to learn. But once you learn it, hey, that's pretty good. Another part that I really like about it is that there's a natural community created around it. People are asking questions about the factory and resources and whatnot, and many players are stepping up to help out and explain some things, showing off their blueprints, sharing their buildings. And the fact that you can share buildings in this game, I think that's awesome. It really helps keep the world feel alive and bring a community around it. It really feels like, hey, I'm not just playing by myself. There are a bunch of other people doing this too. Some people would argue that Arknights Endfield would be better off if it didn't have the base building and the factory gameplay, that it would get more people to play the game. I would say that's probably true. More people might play that game, but that also makes what Endfield is far more boring. Indulge me for a moment as I talk about Zenless Zone Zero. Very quickly, Zenless had what was called TV mode as its primary method of storytelling and side quests. However, at launch, it wasn't good. It was slow, you couldn't speed things up, and it was client-side response time, so everything felt really laggy. Everything was just slow. Beta testers told them about this, and they didn't really address this. So when the game launched, people realized that they hated this part of the game, and so they quit playing. Now, The benefit of TV mode is that it made developing new events and stories a lot simpler. It was immersive based on our role as the protagonist. Instead of needing to show off all the events that were happening directly, the game left a lot of the smaller details to player imaginations. They just needed to write it out in an interesting way, and then we as the players would interpret that. We would imagine it for ourselves. And that works really well when the details are about how horrifying some enemies are, or how mysterious a specific item or a room is, or about how the hollows are an ever-changing maze and you need someone to guide you through it, because you don't know what to expect. Also, it had made sure the devs could pace the action combat gameplay, and because they can control that pacing and mix it with the combat when they needed to, players could be more casual in their approach to the game. That was a huge part of ZZZ's identity, and ultimately, players did not enjoy that. There were other factors as well, but most players did not enjoy how TV mode was implemented. And I agree with them, it did not feel very good. If you were looking for the action combat gameplay, the sluggish, laggy control of TV mode was not fun. So the devs tossed it all aside, and it ultimately saved the game by getting players back. But the game has never been on the same level of immersion, nor the same amount of content needed to engage the casual player base. Now it's all active and combat gameplay. The only regular content in Zenless is endgame bosses, which most casual players don't really enjoy doing. And they can't really make missions like they used to. They used to be able to change the TV layout slightly and have unique puzzles, or have some special NPC quests or missions with engaging dialogue. And this kept players entertained. But with what they have right now, they can't do that. Now they have to take time to place everything in a 3D space. And now we have to make generic enemies and NPCs emote in a way that doesn't really sell well when you're just mashing text boxes with idle animations and no spoken dialogue. It was more believable when we saw less because we had a literal separation. We had to imagine those parts of the gameplay. But now that they show you how generic it is, it doesn't really look good. Like, it does not look appealing at all. It's okay, but it doesn't look appealing. All of that to say, in an effort to save its game, Zenless threw away a primary factor of its identity. That worked financially, but did it improve the overall quality of the game? I would say no. Did I like the old TV mode? No, it was too laggy and that hurt the pacing. But they improved it. I promise you, if you go back and you play TV mode missions or events, or you're a new player, it feels really nice to control now. Except for that last thing they made, that archipelago thing, that was awful. That was not good at all. Anyway, this is not a Zenless video. We're back to Endfield. I don't want Endfield to end up in a similar situation. Obviously, the factory and Zenless's TV mode don't serve the same purposes. One was a method of storytelling, and another is mainly the story's method of having players grind for resources, and some players don't really want to do that. I think the factory is an interesting inclusion, and a really good thing. It keeps players engaged without needing to create entirely brand new things to entertain them. It does set up a sort of barrier to entry, but the players who get past that barrier will probably choose to engage with the game's mechanics. And besides, a ton of the narrative is designed around the Endman being the boss of what amounts to a galactic construction company on a foreign planet. It's actually a moon? Cool, that doesn't matter. I think Endfield would be a waste of my time if they removed the gameplay that sets it apart from other gacha games that it gets compared to. Like, legitimately, if they remove the factory, I would probably stop playing the game. Unironically. I think that's one of the best parts of the game. And it is what separates it from not just being, here's Wuthering Waves, but slightly different. Here's Genshin, but slightly different. Like, no, dude, here's a different game. It's like, oh, that's refreshing. I like that. As I near the end of this review, I might be wrong about this, but it feels like the game is trying to sell you something that's very different from the gameplay. Right now, for me, in my experience, the core gameplay loop is explore the world, organize constructions, farm resources, beat up a couple mobs along the way, and create quicker methods of transportation, increase your economies of outposts, stuff like that. But the game really isn't selling anything for that, not directly. They are selling characters and weapons for the action combat gameplay, but I'm not doing action combat. I'm farming. I don't care about microtransactions. I'm micromanaging resources. Now, I still like the combat, but that's not the focus of how I'm playing. And so unless there's a character with a story that I really love or whose gameplay I really enjoy, I probably won't pull for them because, oh wow, oh, this new operator, they deal 15% more damage than this other one. Okay, but why do I care? Do they have a passive that like speeds up my lines by like 5% or something? No? Okay, then why should I care? If their gameplay or story doesn't really interest me, then I'm probably not going to spend money on them. On a more direct issue, I think it's funny that there's a bit of a gap between the players who want action combat gameplay and the players who want to organize their factories. Some people will prioritize one and neglect the other. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it could lead to a potential issue. Some people might call this doom posting, but it's really not. I'm just trying to analyze the trends of similar games and how they change after launch. I know for a fact they will eventually introduce some new materials to make new items, new gears, new ways to increase the resource economy. Maybe that are exclusive to a new region, or a new recipe, or a new enemy type. One of my concerns is that in the store they have right now, all it does is sell characters and weapons, and it does a pretty good job of doing that. They could also try to use it to sell factory resources, so players could just spend money to bypass playing the game. Now, that's not an issue for me because I wouldn't buy that, but I think that would be an issue of like, oh, we made this part of the game tedious. Well, if you want to escape that tedium, you could just spend some money. It's like, why would you do that? This part's the fun part. Why would you spend money to skip it? Beyond that, I've referenced this a bit before. What's stopping them from creating a character that has a passive that doubles an outpost resource generation? Or maybe reduces your overall power consumption when they are put in charge of an outpost? What's stopping them from making a nearly unkillable boss that has a drop you need for a very specific item to generate? Those last two, they're far-fetched, and those are very doom posty. I am not worried about those right now because they haven't happened. And if they do happen, they probably won't really affect me because I won't interact with that kind of nonsense. Quick tangent, one of my favorite games is Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. That game is insanely good and its gameplay loop is actually pretty similar. Mine and farm for resources mixed in with action combat gameplay. Gameplay wise, they're really similar, but they fundamentally aren't the same. Capcom wasn't prowling around on my 3DS trying to get me to spend $100 so I could get a new weapon to make the boss easier to fight. They weren't trying to get me to spend $100 so I could skip out on charm farming. They gave me all the tools and said, here you go, figure it out. That's not what Endfield is. Endfield is not a $60 or $80 game with a complete story from start to finish that players can enjoy, with some endgame stuff if they want to keep playing. It's a free-to-play, live service, farming exploration game with a slot machine designed to induce FOMO into players so they spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And this game will cease to exist if they do not make enough money selling characters. This is the type of game that I would love to have a complete experience. From what I've played, I would gladly fork over 60 to 80 bucks to play a complete version of this game. They don't want me to spend 60 bucks, they want me to spend 600 bucks. And I'm never doing that. I think what could happen very far in the future, not anytime real soon, if they look at their chart and say, hey, we're not making enough money, we need to change that, they could decide to cut some corners of this game that I find are very enjoyable, but don't really make them money. Like, they could just say, hey, you want to build this type of building? Well, you need to buy it from the store. Are they doing that right now? No, of course they aren't. I'm not saying that is a problem right now. I am saying I don't want them to go in that direction because what they're selling right now is, here are characters and here are weapons, but I don't really need those things, so I'm not spending for them. I would love it if the game continued in its current state, but I don't know if the company behind that will continue to make money in that way. And usually with power creep, it's like, how are they going to power creep the factory? Like in a year from now, how will my factories become obsolete for some reason? I didn't write a strong conclusion to this script, so this is kind of going off the top of my head of how I really feel about this game. I really enjoy this game. Like, I really enjoy it. Past the story parts of the opening tutorial that were nonsense, getting past the parts of the story that are just wasting your time with unnecessary details, over-explaining things, getting past all of that, the terrible NPC designs, I can't stand them, make designed clothes for people with tails, getting past all of that. I really enjoy playing this game, and I think it looks really good, it feels really good, I really enjoy playing this game. And my fear is that, hey, the way I enjoy the game is also not making them money. And I'm afraid they will try to make that experience for players like me. They will try to make that worse in the hopes that players will spend more money. That is my fear. And if that doesn't work, the game will decide, you know what, we're just gonna shut down. And I think that stinks, because this game is actually really good. Like, if this were an $80 game, dude, sign me up. I hope it continues to do well. I hope it doesn't become overbearingly predatory. And I hope it keeps its appeal for both types of groups looking for a casual experience and an action combat experience. I hope it can balance those well enough to keep both parties entertained without catering too far to one side or the other. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I got. My name's Yojimbo Blade, and I hope you have a blessed day. See you soon. 1 hour? I'm gonna cut this down to pieces. It's gonna be 30 minutes.